Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. It's 5 p.m. This is a special meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. Call the meeting to order. Ms. Kendall, would you give us a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Peak,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
He'll be joining us later.
Thank you. Council members Emilio,
Here.
Coletti,
Here.
McAdams, Paduri.
Here.
And Tomlinson.
Here.
Absent currently from the meeting are Mayor Pro Tem Smith and Councilmember McAdams.
All right. Well, we certainly have a quorum still. So let's move on. We have one item on the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a
I'll move
motion.
to
Second.
A vote, please. And I see Councilmember McAdams has joined us.
I do see her. Thank you, Mayor. That was motioned by Councilmember Tomlinson and seconded by Councilmember Emilio.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Council members Emilio,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams.
Hello, everyone. Aye.
Thank you. Paduri and Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Smith absent at the moment.
We have, as I mentioned, one item on the agenda tonight, conference with real property negotiators, two properties, 77 Asilomar and 1313 Ocean View Boulevard. That's the golf course and the local water project. And agency negotiators, Mr. Harvey, negotiating parties, Michael Sharp with Corsco, and the topic is price in terms of payment. Do we have any public comment?
We do have Ms. Haynes in the meeting. Ms. Haynes, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. According to the agenda, your closed session tonight is about the price and terms of payment for 77 Asilomar and the price and terms of payment for 1313 Ocean View Boulevard. On July 31, I sent you an Attorney General opinion quoting case law showing that it would violate the Brown Act for you to discuss any other topic during tonight's closed session. Tonight's agenda puzzles me. I thought you had already set the price and terms of payment for the golf course grill, which is 77 Asilomar. And I thought you already had a contract for Worldwide Automobile Auction, which is 1313 Ocean View Boulevard. According to the Attorney General, if you discuss any topics other than the price and terms of payment for those two properties, that discussion must occur in open session, even though those topics may be reasonably related to the price and terms of payment. During open session tonight, for agenda item 13B, I will request that in your performance evaluation for the city attorney, you address the number of closed sessions you have had about price and terms of payment for various real estate transactions. And tonight's will be the fourth on these two properties, and that you retain a consulting attorney to interview each of you to determine what was actually discussed during these sessions in order to ensure the council's compliance with the Brown Act during closed session discussions, which would further the council's goal number 4 of transparency, accountability, and communication. So please take notes about what you discussed tonight and add to those notes what you discussed on June 2 and June 21 in closed session for discussion of the price and terms of payment for 77 Asilomar. The consulting attorney can advise you whether or not those discussions remain within the parameters required by the appellate court decision titled Shapiro v. San Diego City Council. Such an evaluation of the city attorney would be an authentic commitment by the city council to assure the public about Pacific Grove's goal of transparency, accountability, and communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
No, sir, no other public as part of the meeting.
All right, we'll close public comment and go into closed session. And Mr. Harvey, you will be the host.
Can I have a sound check by any chance?
Hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. It's 6 p.m. It's a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. I'll call the meeting to order. Ms. Kendall, would you give us a roll call, please?
Will do. Mayor Peak,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Here.
Council members Emilio,
Here.
Coletti,
Here.
McAdams,
Here.
Feduri,
Here.
and Tomlinson.
Here.
All are present via Zoom webinar.
Councilmember Emilio, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Definitely. Everybody stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
In a second? May we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson, Council members Feduri,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
and Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the agenda.
Thank you. We'll now go to council and staff announcements, and I see normal procedure. Our city attorney actually gives the report on closed session. Mr. Laredo.
Yes, good evening, council. The city council met in closed session this evening to discuss real property negotiations regarding the properties located at 77 Asilomar and 1313 Ocean View Boulevard. Those properties are the Pacific Grove Golf Links and the local water project. The negotiating parties include the city manager, Ben Harvey, and Michael Sharp, the CEO of Corsco. Discussions involve the price and terms of payment for both properties. There was a motion made by Councilmember Tomlinson and seconded by Coletti, and direction was provided for staff to hire a consultant to analyze the local water project, financial operation, and bring back recommendations as to what is required for break-even operations. This motion passed, was approved by Tomlinson, Coletti, McAdams, and Peak, and was opposed by Emilio, Smith, and Feduri. That concludes my report out from closed session. Thank you.
Mr. Harvey, do we have any staff announcements tonight?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Do we have any council member announcements? Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I was on Lighthouse last weekend and just wanted to compliment the volunteers in the parking strips. My wife and I went out to breakfast on Lighthouse there, and we're there for over an hour, came back and they were still weeding away, and I wanted to compliment all the volunteers on that. And that's what I wanted to do, and I made contact with many of them, told them great job.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. MPUSD school started today, and PG Unified School District starts tomorrow. So just a reminder to drive slow, keep an eye out for additional walkers and bikers, and let's make sure that our students are getting to and from school safely. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the teachers, administrators, parents, and students for really persisting through the pandemic. Our kids get to start school in person. I know my son is very excited. And as long as our COVID cases hopefully decrease, we'll keep it that way. Lastly, if you're a renter in Monterey County, the county's rental assistance program still has millions of dollars in funding available. So if you are behind on your rent due to the pandemic, please call 211 to apply and to start that process. Thank you.
Yeah, it was several announcements. On Saturday, August 7th, we have two events. The Kiwanis has their annual pancake breakfast at the Youth Center. That's a fundraiser for the Youth Center. And also on Saturday in the evening, there'll be the Peace Lantern ceremony at Lover's Point. And of course, next week, we've got everything cars. We have our little car show, our the Rotary PG Auto Rally as well. Check the papers for the times and dates. And next week, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see that we have the Architectural Review Board and the Museum Board meeting on next Tuesday. And on Thursday, we have the Economic Development Commission and our Planning Commission meeting. Did I get those dates right, Mr. Harvey?
I believe those all sound correct to me. I'm looking to the city clerk if she has any corrections. I think that that's accurate. You're
Okay.
muted.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, good. And now we'll turn to the consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, the general public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to provide comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Inga Lawrenson-Doimer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been noticing that we seem to get an increasing number of errata sheets, and they show up right the same day as even a meeting, as in tonight's, I mean, most of them are okay, but since timely, correct information is the backbone of transparency and public participation, I think that Pacific Grove needs maybe some improvement in its attention to details. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, I have one more caller, Mayor. Bill Bloom, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Okay. Well, I wasn't unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would just like to, this water situation is still puzzling to me. And I would just like the city attorney to maybe give us a real explanation as to why Pebble Beach can still get water meters, and the people that bought water from the Malpaso project are able to get water meters and we are not. And I just have never understood why that is the case. And I think our city attorney should give us some type of explanation, because I know he knows quite a bit about this. Something rational that we actually could understand. And I think Councilman Coletti also knows quite a bit about it, and maybe he can speak to it at some time in the future. We only need, for those people that are on the list, only need 2.5 acre feet of the 15 we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our hand, Michelle, you have the floor.
Welcome.
I think I'm unmuted now. I wanted to speak on item 7B, the second reading.
All right, well, to do that, it would be appropriate to pull that item from the consent agenda, and we're going to start the consent agenda in just a moment.
Okay, you can't speak on the consent agenda items?
Well, go ahead.
Oh,
Maybe no one else will want to speak. And
okay. Well, I wanted to speak today because I was not able to attend last week's hearing when I'm assuming more people spoke. But I was trying to get a copy of the Bryce Consulting report that was done for the base salary compensation comparison. I found the figure to be startlingly high, and I don't know what you paid for the consulting or what city's size were compared, but a city of our size, I don't know, 17,000 or so. I did a quick comparison, and the salary that was his base salary is $216,000 being offered. And the governor of California base is only $201,680. And it will go up in December to 210. So he's still making more than the governor of California, which I just find frightening that we're paying that kind of money and going around crying poor. We squander our money right and left. I don't believe he's had a stellar record, starting with the grand jury report that talked about losing $100,000 on the Project Bella matter, and a sales tax increase that was so poorly written that the state won't even collect it. I'm just amazed that we're offering this kind of money in our little town and I think we should not do this. Maybe if Gavin Newsom is recalled, he might want a job here. It would be an increase in his salary. Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I see no other hands raised.
I will close public comment, move on to the consent agenda. Any council members wishing to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing no hands, anyone from the public wishing to pull an item from the consent agenda?
Lisa Ciani, you have the floor.
I thank you. I'd like to pull 7C and 9C. That's ARB and George Washington Park.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Move approval, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, let's just let's talk about for a second where they're going to go, okay? Before we move to approve the modified consent agenda, just so we got our ducks in a row. So 7C would go to 11B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and And 9C, George Washington Park would be new business. And that would be 13D.
Is that unfinished, Mr. Mayor? Ongoing?
Yeah. Let's put it as new business because we are asking, staff's requesting a new report, a new study. Like most things in our city, it's all ongoing if we really looked at it hard enough.
Thank you.
So 9C becomes 13D. Okay. All right. Mayor Pro Tempore Smith, move to approve the modified agenda, consent agenda.
I've got a point of order or point of inquiry. I'd like to record a no vote on item 7B. And the city clerk could do that. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Mayor Pro Tempore Smith, your motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda with the 2 modifications of 7C and 9C.
I am happy to second
Do we have
that.
a second, Councilmember McAdams?
Yes, and also I don't want to pull any items, but I did want to thank our city clerk for her update regarding the posting of online agreements. So thank you very much for that, Ms. Kendall.
You're welcome. Do we take a vote, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Paduri?
Aye.
Coletti?
Aye.
Emilio?
Aye.
Mayor Peak?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the consent agenda as amended, recording of a no vote as to 7B by Councilmember Coletti.
What have we done? We've just approved the council meetings from July 21st. We've approved the Traffic Safety Commission's recommendation to establish a residential parking program on 3rd Street. Thank you, Ms. Francis. We've adopted a resolution approving an amended Council Policy 400-5 on investments. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. We've we've held the second reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2.16 to require quarterly reports of expenditures made under the city manager's spending authority. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. We've held a second reading of an ordinance to amend Mr. Harvey's salary and benefits. And we've received a report on the status of research into online posting of agreements from Ms. Kendall and Mr. Cassimi. Thank you. And received a report from myself on evacuation and wildfire plans. I'll put in a plug. There's some good links in there if you're interested. We've received a report from Mr. Harvey on local emergency actions, and we've directed the city manager to enter into an agreement with Crossroads Software for a new electronic citation system from Ms. Francis. Thank you. And we've authorized the execution of an agreement with Neal's Engineers Corporation for a capital improvement plan engineering services not to exceed $232,645 from Ms. Hallaby. Thank you. And received minutes from the Beautification Natural Resources Commission on May 18th from Mr. Go. Thank you. And from Alex Othon, we've received minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of June 10th. And that brings us to item 11A, adoption of an ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on new development projects that cannot be served with water. Ms. Hunter, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council and members of the public. I do have a PowerPoint I would like to share as the bulk of my presentation. So I'm going to try sharing my screen. Okay, did that work?
That worked.
Great, thanks.
You'll just want to put it into slideshow mode. Yeah, thank you.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. So this is a short presentation on temporary moratorium on new development that does not have adequate water. The current situation is that, as many people know, and the council knows, the State Water Resource Control Board has limited the water utility's ability to set new water meters on vacant properties. Vacant parcels that do not have a water meter are therefore unable to be developed at this time. However, the Community Development Department is required to process architectural permits if submitted, regardless of the status of water on the subject property. So the current concerns with this situation are the Community Development Department currently has 10 vacant properties on the water wait list. 4 have approved architectural permits that will likely expire before the cease and desist order is lifted, and 6 architectural permits that have expired since the water wait list was created in 2008. There is concern about architectural permits expiring before the CDO is lifted and a water meter can be provided. So the effect of the temporary moratorium that staff is recommending would be, although the adoption of a moratorium will have no effect on expired or approved permits, it will prohibit the submittal of new application on lots that do not have water meters, saving applicants thousands of dollars and significant staff time. So the next steps for the council would be, if adopted, the moratorium would sunset once the cease and desist order is lifted and the water utility is able to set new meters. Moratoria are always temporary in nature and include a sunset measure, as they are intended to be an interim and/or emergency measure to alleviate a problem. If so desired, the council could direct staff to investigate ways to prolong the lifespan of approved permits in cases where there is no meter. This would require 1 or more amendments to the Pacific Grove Municipal Code. If directed by the council, this would be a separate process and not directly related to the recommended temporary moratorium that you are discussing tonight. So just an important note for people who might be listening, if you're on the water wait list, there is no renewal fee or expiration once you're included on the water wait list. And just a small administrative amendment to the moratorium ordinance that you have in your packet. We learned that there was a little bit of administrative error in finding number 8. You can see this is a sentence within a larger paragraph, finding number 8, where the items in red need to be administratively corrected, which we can do in the record. So that this sentence reads, the city is required by law to process these applications and collect the cost of these efforts from applicants, even though it is known that insufficient water and water meters are available to enable construction of the projects. That concludes my brief staff report. I'm available for any questions, and also Deputy City Attorney Michael Laredo is available as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I do not see any hands raised at the moment, Mr. Mayor. I do. Mr. Bloom, you have the floor. Bill Bloom.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope the council will reconsider this moratorium because it keeps anybody that has a vacant lot, and I don't have one now. I am the last person on the water wait list, or the very first person, the last person to get water on the water wait list. and I don't have any vacant lots that I want to take into consideration, but I would, I'm just not sure that what this is really going to accomplish. I do think that what you could do is create a Q&A and a bold explanation of what somebody is going to what's going to be involved in somebody applying for water when there are no water meters available to be set. I think staff has done a pretty good job of explaining that to people. I know it's confusing. I've explained it to a lot of people. So I'm just not sure that this moratorium is really necessary. And I do hope that you will take into consideration those of us who are on the list. And if there is not a way that these the permits that we have obtained and paid money for and approved plans that, and I hope everybody understands that these are not building permits. These are just architectural approved plans. So I don't see any reason why anything would have to change on those plans. They will have to be approved by the building department if and when we get water. So it's not like something's going to run out, like code is going to change on something like that. So I'd really like you to take into consideration that maybe there'd be a moratorium on the end of our permit expiring. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Inga Doimer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. Actually, I fully support this amendment. It's been ridiculous that people are sitting on the water wait list when the state is not going to lift the CDO, when there's all this misinformation given out in innuendos or whatever, that even one of our planning commissioners still is unclear on what the whole concept is of whether it's CPUC or the state CDO. And the fact that our water project is totally different than Malpaso or Pebble Beaches, because, hey, our administration promised when they got the funding for this, putting the water project in, they promised to give it back to the state the river, until the CDO was lifted, which was then promptly switched around to say, oh no, but we should be able to use this ahead of time. Well, KLM can't possibly set a meter by law with the CPUC, with condition 2 and whatever. So I think that this moratorium saves people a lot of grief by just saying, no, you're not going to be put on the water wait list because you've got a vacant lot, you don't have a meter, it can't be done yet. So let's just wait, and this moratorium would be lifted as soon as there was available. And water's not going to become available until the state and the CPUC lift condition 2 and et cetera, et cetera. So I think this makes perfect sense, and that people are not sitting there complaining each week, month, twice a month, whatever, about the fact, well, can't you just go to the state? Can't you this? No, it's not happening. So this moratorium makes sense to save the public and the city some grief. It's going to have to be resubmitted anyway when it's lifted. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anne Marie Miller, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. I just want to understand, and Council Member Allison went through the slides well, and I want to echo Bill Bloom's comments about the quality of the transparency and just the communication efforts. Pretty good job thus far. We are currently on the water meter list, and we did just have another extension of our ARB. I don't know if I'm using the proper words, but permit or et cetera. So I believe we are current, right, for being on the water meter list and also the ARB. And I know this isn't just about the Millers, but it does affect things we're doing. I just wanted to confirm, I believe in the presentation, I saw that the moratorium would not affect existing people on the water meter list and that our ARB permits would stay current and or valid as this moratorium persists. Is that accurate?
Well, we'll actually, I'm sure, address that question later.
Okay.
Do you have any further comment?
Do you? I'm just asking my husband. No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kirsty Wild, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm Kirsty Wild. I'm speaking on behalf of my two children, Eli Miller and Hannah Bell, who each own a 60 by 60 lot on Chestnut and Walnut Streets. They're hometown kids who dream of living here again someday, and when they get permission to build a modest home on their lots, they will. They've been on the water wait list for 12 years and 5 years respectively. They're very worried that unless the wording of this moratorium is changed, it will guarantee that their $40,000 investment in their active ARB permits will be lost. Mr. Coletti understands how those of us with active ARB permits on the water wait list are caught in limbo because we don't have meters on our lots. That means we can't buy water at any price until the state lifts the meter moratorium. So folks building granny units in their backyards have bought water and built homes. The developers downtown bought water and built multi-million-dollar condos, but little guys with tiny empty lots can't because they don't have meters. There are only 5 of us on the wait list with active ARB permits. If you pass this moratorium, I ask for 2 things. Add wording to state that while the moratorium on accepting new development permits is in force, you will also place a moratorium on the expiration of existing ARB permits until 6 months after this ordinance sunsets. That would keep our permits in force until the state government allows us to have a water meter. Number 2, if periodic review of our permits is required, please allow that to be done with a simple administrative design change every 2 years. And as Mr. Coletti suggested, make it a zero-cost renewal process. Currently, the cost of a simple administrative design change is $1,800, and my kids have paid that 3 times to prevent the loss of their $40,000 investments in ARB permits. Please explicitly state in this ordinance that administrative design change permits are not considered new. You know, there were once over 100 people on the water wait list. Now there are only 11, 5 of us with active, very expensive ARB permits. We are the unfortunate ones and would greatly appreciate your help in keeping our ARB permits in force while we continue to wait for permission to build. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Tomlinson, then Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Allison, for the great report. We have a very full agenda tonight, so I would like to just start out by saying I fully support this moratorium going forward. I think it's a very interesting discussion, and I want to have the discussion about what to do with regard to the folks that are in limbo that we heard from tonight. But I don't think we should have that discussion tonight. I think that we should approve the moratorium so we don't put anybody else in limbo. That's what it's designed to do. And then ask Allison to come back with some options for council on what to do, what's fair for the folks that, inadvertently or just due to circumstances have ended up in limbo. And I, as far as the comments we heard tonight, I'm very supportive of trying to find a middle of the road resolution that's good for everybody involved. But I don't want to waste a bunch of time tonight talking about it because we don't have options presented in front of us. We don't have all the details. But as far as the moratorium goes, I very much support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I totally agree with Councilmember Tomlinson. It doesn't make sense to allow projects to move forward when there's no meter and there's no access to a meter. I also agree that we can't tonight. We have a meter moratorium ordinance in front of us. We don't have any options or ability to just create an ordinance out of thin air right now. I don't think anyone would want that either, by the way. There are a couple of possibilities that I'll just briefly mention. Currently, the city, through the master fee schedule, does not have people who are subject, who are actually on the water wait list and have active architectural review or architectural permits. They are not required to pay the extension. There are up to 2 extensions that you can have on the ARB permit. We could think about, through the master fee schedule, doing something similar to keep a permit application, a no-cost permit application, so that we can keep that permit alive. It sounds like there's only 4 on the water wait list that would be subject to that kind of scenario. I don't want to tinker with the municipal code at all, but if we can do this through the master fee schedule, that'd be fine with me. And I think that I agree with Councilmember Tomlinson. That's something we should bring back for council discussion at a later date. And finally, someone asked about Malpaso water. That's because that is not subject to CalAm. That's a private water right. So that's the reason for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember McAdams, but I do want to bring up that I think some of these items that have been talked about, wait lists, et cetera, we're not dealing with the wait list on this agenda item. I think we should have a future agenda item dealing with the wait list and what type of options we should do with that. But for this particular agenda item, I'm for this particular recommendation.
I'll just make a few comments just to address those comments we heard from the public. Mr. Bloom would like a rational, logical, clear explanation of how we got here with all the myriad of complex regulations, and I'm afraid that is not possible to do that. It's certainly not something that the city created, and to try to explain what the state and the water district have done will be beyond the city's powers. There was a question about, does this moratorium impact anyone that is currently on the water wait list? And I've already asked that question of our interim community development director, Hunter, but I'm going to put her on the record again. Does this have an impact on anyone currently on the water wait list?
Thank you, Mayor. It would not. If the council decides to adopt this moratorium ordinance, it would be taking effect, on the effective date moving forward only.
Thank you. And last but not least, this whole moratorium, we've heard people eloquently explain how frustrated they've been and waiting up to 12 years for a permit. Just an unbelievably long period of time. This action, this moratorium, will prevent adding people to those that are ultimately disappointed and frustrated. Councilmember McAdams.
I am ready to make a motion if you would like,
Please.
Mayor. And before I do that, I'm so sorry, but I was amiss. I didn't pull 9A, which is the emergency actions for the COVID, and I know typically we discuss that. Is there any way that we could do that after this?
Your Honor, if I could, through the mayor.
Yes,
Procedurally
please.
speaking, yes, we could reopen. You could have a motion for reconsideration of the consent agenda. You would need that seconded and approved by the council.
Okay, I apologize for that. So let me go ahead and make this motion to introduce and hold a first reading of an ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on the receipt of community development applications for projects not able to obtain water permits by reason of the SWRCB cease and desist order and direct publication of summary of the ordinance as approved by our city attorney.
Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Councilmember McAdams,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmembers Coletti,
Aye.
Baduri,
Aye.
Tomlinson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Councilmember McAdams, you want to make a motion to reconsider 9A?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move that we open up the consent agenda to discuss item 9A, which is ratification of new local emergency actions.
Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
No.
Councilmembers Emilio,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Baduri,
Aye.
and Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1.
All right, let's hear that after the city council goals. That would be 12B, unfinished and ongoing business. Okay, we're now on to the former item 7C, which is second reading of an ordinance amending chapter 2370-060 Architectural Review Board membership. And that's my agenda item. Since I've already made a presentation the last meeting, I'll just briefly describe what this agenda item is. It's a second reading to modify the ordinance on membership. It would reduce the number of members from 7 to 5. Currently, there are only 5 members on the ARB due to lack of volunteers, actually, to fill all the spots. And it will also lower or reduce the qualifications to make them more general, to consider a wide variety or a wider range of applicants. I don't think we'll have a significant impact on the ARB decisions, and it will allow a person, a non-Pacific Grove resident that has architectural experience in the city of Pacific Grove to be considered as a member on the ARB. And that concludes my brief report. May we have public comment?
Lisa Ciani, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry, let's see. I'd like to repeat some of my earlier comments in case you might be willing to discuss them before voting on this ordinance. First, it's absolutely reasonable and advisable to adjust the qualifications to allow membership for an architect who's worked frequently in Pacific Grove but does not live here. That's been needed for a long time. However, the description in the proposed revision should be better defined to describe demonstrated knowledge and experience, not just experience in Pacific Grove. A language that was suggested by my architect husband, who can't attend today because he's traveling. Second, how will reducing the number of architectural review board members from 7 to 5 improve the membership situation on ARB? It won't facilitate appointments. Furthermore, why would you reduce the number of members when we're still in a hopefully temporary COVID situation that has prevented many people from joining boards and committees due to caring for children or grandchildren or needing to move? I think that there's simply no reason to be doing that. There have been low membership at different times in the past for varying reasons, and it's important to have the flexibility of the 7-member board possibility. Third, also, it's not reasonable to remove the requirement that a member of the general public shall, quote, demonstrate a special interest, competence, experience, or knowledge in architecture or building material. That's an important requirement for any member. This group needs to have some good awareness of architectural matters. Please look more closely at this proposed ordinance. Only do what's necessary to attract more qualified candidates. And as I requested previously, please make sure the boards and commissions handbook is corrected to list the PG historic context statement and the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties in the materials that ARB should be familiar with. Please remember that ARB's role is to protect the architectural character of Pacific Grove. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do not see any other hands raised.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Any
Motion to
council?
approve, Your Honor.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, maybe we have a vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Council Members Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Kaduri.
Aye.
And Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
We're now on to item 12A, City Council Goals, Tactics, and Mission Statement. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item has been discussed multiple times, as council will acknowledge this year. It's an important item. This is wherein the city council lays out its goals and corresponding tactics. We've also tucked in a revision to the mission statement into this agenda report. At last discussion, council asked city staff to take back the tactics for the established goals and to make revisions to them such that they were achievable, feasible, and realistic. We've made an effort to do that. As multiple staff members were involved in the effort, a red line version was not possible without being really ugly and hard to read. And so I've just included with the agenda report a revised version of those tactics in a clean form, if you will. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, I want to point out that there is a revised mission statement tucked into this agenda report, thanks to council members McAdams and Tomlinson for that effort and allowing me to include that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Any public comment?
We do. Inga Lawrenson-Doimer, you have the floor.
Hi, this is about the mission statement. I want to thank McAdams and Tomlinson for an effort, but I find it to be an absolutely homogenized boilerplate. It's meaningless. it's not a Pacific Grove mission statement. The current mission statement is a Pacific Grove. And excuse me, this council should be thinking about Pacific Grove. This proposed mission statement, it says nothing. Really, it says nothing. It isn't talking about our town. It's talking about any town USA. So I would really strongly advocate for keeping the current mission statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa Ciani, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. That's interesting. I hadn't talked to Inga about that, but we do have similar feelings, not exactly the same. I appreciate that the previous and proposed mission statements are shown next to each other in the agenda report for ease of comparison. And I appreciate the work council members put into developing a new mission statement. However, the proposed statement strikes me as a step backward because it's written in vague professional planner language. Quote, deliver high value and quality results, end quote, replaces the previous quote, provide services that address community needs while enhancing the quality of life, end quote. The earlier version seems much more appropriate, especially as we wish we were successfully emerging from a year and a half of pandemic conditions. Adding citizens in the region is nice, but doesn't make up for the lack of concern for the needs of the public in the language. I think the mission statement could use some more work to be community friendly rather than planner friendly. And I do like Inga's suggestion of just keeping the current mission statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Council discussion on this item. Well, then I'll start off. I thank you also to council members Tomlinson and McAdams for working on the mission statement. Appreciate that. And Mr. Harvey for staff for taking a look at these goals. Two items particularly come to mind. Well, one is the first one, 1A, and because it's near and dear to my heart, it's safe routes to school. I think when we're talking about sidewalks, the number one priority should be safe routes to school. And that was in the earlier version, and somehow that got dropped out this second version. So I would like to reinstate that for 1A, that's the priority. And the other one I had comment on was tactic 1D, which was on the conduct parking study and parking management plan. Actually, that's a duplicate of 7F. I just happen to be a fan of neither one, but it is a duplicate. So I think we can take one out. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to briefly mention tactic 5I, I as in Ida, which says review and revise local water project for efficiency, optimization, and fiscal sustainability purposes. It's at the end of the list, but based on our report out from closed session, I think that's now been moved to the top of the list, and I'm very glad to see that. Thank you.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. Just from a proposed mission statement perspective, just an observation, I'm perfectly fine the way it is. Generally, when it's a sentence and there's repeated words in the same sentence, like quality is repeating twice, perhaps we can work on that, but otherwise I'm perfectly fine. Thank you.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Pedori. Actually, one other revision to the mission statement that a resident had emailed to us was to change the word citizens and replace it with residents to just be more inclusive. And I actually thought that was a very kind and it's a great suggestion. So I would like to do that. And I'd like to thank Don Murphy for emailing Councilmember Tomlinson and I. But thank you to the city manager for continuing to work on this. And, you know, I know the last 2 years, it's great to write agenda reports and connect them to our goals and to really see the work that we will do together for these next 2 years. So so kudos to the last 2 years, because I really feel like we did a lot and we're pretty aggressive about it. And I'm looking forward to the next 2 years. So thank you all. And thank you.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to just echo that the goals and the tactics are great, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work on them, because there's already ones that are underway, and that's wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember McAdams, for working on the mission statement. I would like to make a motion, and I will include in that motion the change from citizens to residents. And if someone has a synonym for quality, I'm open to that as well. But should I make a motion, Mayor?
Please. And
okay.
I'd appreciate it if you'd include the 2 items that I've mentioned as well.
Yes, no problem. Okay, I'd like to adopt I move that we adopt the City Council goals, tactics, and mission statement for 2021-2022 with the following amendments. Item 1D and 7F, only keep one of them. They're duplicates, so pick which one you'd like to keep. And for item 1A, add the priority of safe routes to school. For the mission statement, change the word citizens to residents. And that's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
It was a race. I'm not sure who won that race. Let's just say Councilmember McAdams, since she worked on the mission statement. Sorry, Councilmember Pedori, next time. Councilmember Emilio.
Just a quick discussion item. I'm all for the motion, but I'm just, you know, I've always tried to keep Pacific Grove in mind. I know we all do. But I just think that, I know one of the members of the public mentioned it already, but took the steam out of but I believe that the proposed mission statement deliver quality professional public service to all residents in the Pacific Grove community and the region while ensuring high value and quality results. I think Pacific Grove should be placed before communities, in the place of community.
I'll accept that amendment.
And I will second that.
Okay. May we have Mr. Harvey?
I'm very sorry. Could that please be restated? I didn't quite catch how that's supposed to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it would be the deliver quality professional public service to all residents in the Pacific Grove community and the region while ensuring high value and quality results.
Thank you.
So just inserting the word Pacific Grove. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah.
Yes.
If there's no further discussion, may we have a vote?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmembers Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Paduri,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
We're now at the former item 9A, local emergency actions. Mr. Harvey, you have the floor.
Apologies, I was already on to vehicle miles traveled. Yes, so this is the moment in the agenda where council may discuss actions that have been taken or actions that should be taken as a result of the local emergency and the ongoing pandemic. In this agenda report, we don't have any reports of actions taken, either that need approval or just are provided for information. However, this is the time for the council to discuss anything that they would like to see happen. And I suppose, that's why Councilmember McAdams pulled this item. So I will stop talking and I will turn that over back to you. Thank you.
Do we have anyone from the public wishing to make comment on this item?
I see no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for allowing me to bring this back. On Friday, the Monterey County Board of Supervisors approved the requirement for all county employees to be vaccinated. And those who are unable to get vaccinated for approved reasons, which would be medical or religious, would have to forego weekly COVID-19 testing. The county is also requiring face coverings for visitors to all county facilities. And since Friday, Montage and Community Hospital of the Monterey Peninsula have followed suit as well. So I just wanted to discuss, is staff discussing this with regards to our employees? And, something sort of that's being discovered is a lot of public safety employees across the board are very hesitant and have a low vaccination percentage. So I just was wondering, do we have any idea how many, what's the general percentage of the employees in Pacific Grove that are vaccinated? And with regards to, is that something that would interest the employees for their protection, or the council to, implement this requirement of face coverings temporarily in city facilities?
So I can respond to that if the mayor pleases.
Please.
Thank you. So we have a very high vaccination rate amongst the city workforce. We're at about 80% or even higher. So we have a very good percentage. Yes, this topic, of course, has been in discussion since before the county took action. It's not only something that we're talking about, but other agencies in the area are as well. We are in the process of formulating a proposed policy. We are leaning at the staff level, council can decide otherwise, but at the staff level, we're leaning towards one where if you are not vaccinated currently, you are going to be required to undergo a weekly COVID test. We have seen, okay, let me two-part response on this. We have different mask policies for different city facilities, and there's a reason for that. We have a mask required policy if you visit the library. It's because of the children and the elderly population that visit that. We have a mask required policy if you visit the police station. It's because of the exposure to the public that they have. Masks are not required if you are vaccinated if you visit City Hall. We have ever since the pandemic really started and since we've been open, we have a very small amount of visitors to City Hall. I don't know exactly why, but it's just the truth. We don't have very many people that come in person any longer. So we ask that if you are not vaccinated, that you wear a mask. And if you are vaccinated, you don't have to at this point. It's a fluid situation. We could change on that matter. But that is where we sit currently, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And just a follow-up comment to that. If staff wants to change something or if cases continue to increase, just know that I am definitely supportive of whatever is decided, because I think, as far as our employee safety and the public safety, that is really a responsibility that I do not take lightly. So it sounds like, you're already in discussion, which is great. And thank you to the 80% of employees that have been vaccinated. So that is very, very good to hear. Thanks.
Any other council comments or discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Harvey, for the report. And we'll move on to the next item, which is 13A, adopt regional vehicle miles traveled, VMT, thresholds of significance. Welcome back, Ms. Hunter.
I thank you, mayors and members of the council and the public. I will just provide a brief staff report before handing it over to our consultants, who I will introduce in a moment. This item pertains to recent changes in the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, relating to the analysis of potential development-related transportation impacts. The state legislature, through the adoption of Senate Bill 743, has changed the metrics for measuring traffic impacts from the previous measurement of level of service, or LOS, to vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. This requirement went into effect in July 2020. The City of Pacific Grove participated in the regional study that created traffic impact thresholds and developed screening criteria to address potential impacts relating to traffic. These thresholds and tools for analyzing potential impacts will be explained further in the following presentation. It is important to note that the adoption of this resolution and the use of these tools and methodologies moving forward will not require that past approved projects and projects subject to CEQA that are currently underway be retroactively reviewed under these newer thresholds. This presentation was made before the Planning Commission at its May 15th, 2021 meeting. The Commission recommended adoption of the resolution formalizing VMT as the city's new traffic methodology, which will ensure that the city's review of projects is in compliance with CEQA. That concludes my very brief staff report, and I will hand the presentation over to Frederick Venter and Mike Schmidt of Kimley Horn, our consultants, to provide a more in-depth and comprehensive presentation on the background, purpose, and results of the study, as well as a demonstration of the calculator tool that they developed specifically for Pacific Grove. Thank you for listening to my report, and Frederick and Mike, go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Let me just do a little, see if we can get it in the right place. Okay, great. I probably should start up with a almost an apology because this material is very dense. It's very new for everybody. And so it often takes several rounds of it to really fully grasp it. So we'll try to do a good job of it tonight, but don't feel bad if it doesn't all catch the first time because it's so new. So these are the major items I'd like to cover today. I'm first going to talk a little bit more about the SB 743 background, and then I'm going to provide an overview of the actual act. And then we're going to talk about analysis. And really, I'm going to focus on that as very practically what happens if I bring a new project forward in Pacific Grove, what process do I have to go through? Then I'm going to talk about the maps, some of the methods we do, and then as Allison said, we'll also cover the BMT calculator. So first, just a little bit of context. This is an excerpt from a report that the state legislature required, which is called SB 150. But basically, it was a report card for the different MPOs throughout the state. And what they did is they kind of said, well, let's look at how our sustainable community strategies and how our efforts to date have been to success to reduce greenhouse gases. And you can see, initially when you're starting to have some good traction, but then as time has gone on, it started to reverse course. And you can see there's a strong correlation both with greenhouse gases and with BMT. And that's part of the reason that BMT has become the preferred metric for this. It's pretty obvious when you look at this graphic in retrospect, what really happened was we started to have a downward drift because of the recession. And as the economy started to pick back up, it started going in the other direction. But you can see also, just want to make a point, there's these two green dots out here. That's where as a state, we want to be in the future. So you can see we're not heading towards the goals that we've set for ourselves right now. So a little bit of history with level of service. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, actually. I started my career actually working on the Highway Capacity Manual. So I do see a lot of value in level of service, but I also see how BMT can be a good way to augment that. There have been 6 editions. It's really been the fundamental way we guide transportation decision-making in the United States for nearly 70 years, nearly everywhere. But we've realized through that experience that level of service doesn't always hit the mark. There have been some negative outcomes with it, and some of the things have been, in some instances, it does promote urban sprawl. It does have some negative impacts to active transportation. If you think about it, often what we do is we end up widening intersections, adding more lanes, and well, that makes it harder for pedestrians and bicyclists to get around. And then we've realized there's a phenomenon called induced demand, which is just basically the idea that congestion has a natural effect of suppressing some trips. We decide not to make a trip because it's congested, but when we add new capacity, people start making trips they weren't making before because it becomes easier. So we know that that's an effect. But the positive thing is we really understand level of service. BMT, we're truly starting out new with. And I get calls from people all over the United States asking us about how this is going and wanting to know if it'll fit in with their communities. So California is really at the leading edge of this. And so it's pretty much all the experience is in California with BMT. So just in terms of SB 743, it is CEQA specific. So that's important to note. This doesn't mean you can't do level of service outside of it. You just can no longer use level of service as the basis for CEQA documentation. You need to use BMT basically. Really, SB 743 is a little wider than BMT. We always kind of gravitate when we're talking about it to really focus on BMT, but it has some higher scale goals that go along with it. Specifically, we're seeking sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction by promoting denser infill development, reducing single occupancy vehicles, and promoting mass transit. Lead agencies had until July 1st, 2020 to implement it, so we're obviously past that date. So this is a requirement for all CEQA analysis. The most recent guidance is from December 2018. So one of the parts that went with SB 743 is the state said, Office of Planning and Research, we want you to give guidance to everyone throughout the state. So we've been very careful as we develop guidance and we've worked throughout the state on this for many agencies to make sure that we have guidance that we think will be supported by what OPR has put out there. It does recommend that land uses be split out. I'm going to talk about what that means in a moment. And then BMT is the principal metric. So just quickly, what is BMT? Well, it's a pretty simple calculation, really. If you kind of look at this example on the screen, we have 4 vehicles and they travel 3 miles. So BMT is strictly 4 vehicles times 3 miles comes out to 12, and that's 12 vehicle miles traveled, 12 BMT. So that's the metric I'm talking about when I say BMT. So once we've established how we calculate BMT, the question then becomes we need to set thresholds, and these thresholds are part of the CEQA approach. So we all know that we need a significance threshold. So above that value, we have a significant impact. And so what the state and OPR has recommended is they've recommended 15% less than the average VMT per capita. And I've got more detail of how this works in a moment kind of thing. But the thing I want you to capture almost instantly is these are pretty aggressive goals. Because if you think about the average, and we're going to be 15% below that. So the state has set very aggressive goals. Similarly, office, 15% less per VMT per employee. Retail's measured a little bit differently, and I'm going to talk about why that is in a few minutes here. Transportation is a net increase. Not really going to get into that today, but the takeaway for transportation facilities is that it is very difficult now to do a widening project without having an impact. That's probably the easy takeaway, because anytime we widen a road, we get a little bit of that induced demand effect often, and often that causes a little bit of increase in VMT. So we start out in a kind of a hole with a transportation project. There are some exceptions, but that's just kind of a general statement. Neither statute or CEQA guidelines include thresholds. So OPR gave guidance. You don't have to follow that guidance, but if you don't follow that guidance, we need substantial evidence. So here's how we calculate it. So I'm going to start first with two things we're going to call efficiency metrics. And these are the per capita, per employee. So the way we do this is, and I'm only taking a single home in this example, but you got to imagine we're talking about lots of homes. Like we don't typically, we wouldn't evaluate one home. We'd evaluate a new residential development that maybe has 10 units. And so you can see, we've got the trips you make to your home, to school, the trips you make to shopping, the trips you make to work, back and forth kind of thing. And then we have 3 people that live in this home. So we do the math up here, and you can see we come up to 50 VMT. You divide through by 3 people. We end up with 16.7 VMT per capita. And in this example, we had a threshold of 17.5, so no significant impact. Similarly, this is the way the office works. We think about the commute trips to the office, supplier, customer trips. And this is kind of the ideal, I should say, because sometimes for the purposes of analysis, we do simplify this a little bit. And this is one of the examples, because we really only look at the commute trips when we talk about work generated uses. But it's the same idea. We calculate up all the VMT, we divide through by the number of employees, we get a per employee metric, we compare it to that threshold, and we figure out whether it's a significant impact. In this example, I came out with 23 VMT per employee. Threshold was 20, so we would have a significant impact, and there would be the need to figure out how to mitigate that impact. So now I want to talk about retail. So retail is one of the few real beneficiaries of SB 743. And I'm talking primarily about local serving retail, kind of thinking about your Walgreens, your supermarkets, like a small dentist office or something like that, something that serves local, very localized kind of thing. And so what happens, and it's a little bit of an interesting phenomenon, but it makes sense when you kind of think it through, is when you add a new store, well, you shorten the trips, and most of the trips that are at a store aren't the employees going to work there, they're the customers coming to the store. So most of the time when we keep adding more of these uses in the urban fabric, we have the outcome of reducing VMT. And that's why with these types of uses, we use a different metric. And that's basically, we use this net change metric. So you can see in the whole region right now, if you just imagine, we have 5 million VMT, but these few folks are traveling farther to go to the store. On the right side, we add that and we store, we had a very small reduction. I'm sorry, I got some feedback. And you can see that it ends up in a net reduction. So this would be a non-significant impact. And this is one of the reasons we'll talk about in a minute, is generally speaking, local serving retail is basically, we can presume no significant impact. We don't even typically require analysis for that. Hotels are kind of similar, just to make the point kind of thing. We get a lot of questions about hotels. It's kind of the same idea. If you're putting more hotels closer to destinations where people want to go, in a way, you're reducing the VMT versus them staying further and further and further away and still driving to the attractions they want to go to. So that's why hotels tend to perform similarly to retail. So I had said, if you have a project with different uses, you've got to look at them separately. And this is different than when we do traffic analysis. If you think about when we do traffic analysis, we take a site and maybe we've got office and residential and retail, and we look at it in total. We just look at the traffic. We add it all up. That's not how we deal with SB 743. With SB 743, we need to look at each use and evaluate each use on its own merits. We do get to take into account any like need efficiencies, like, oh, well, the residential folks now make shorter trips to retail because they can walk, or I can walk to my work. We do account for that, but we still have to evaluate each use its own way. And you can see in this example, you know, I had a residential, an office, and a retail, and 2 out of the 3 didn't have a significant impact, but 1 did. So this project does have a significant impact and would need to mitigate this. So now I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about it. I bring a project forward. What's my experience? What steps do I have to go through? There's a memorandum that's also included. I think that we've provided. It has a very complex flow chart. And that's really, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details in the flow chart, but the point of it is that somebody who's coming through can very easily kind of map exactly what they need to do. We're just going to talk about the high level steps today, which is just these 6 major steps. So I bring a project forward. What are the 6 major things that I go through? So the first one is we evaluate the land use type. And what that means is we turn it into terms that we understand from traffic. We have this thing called Institute of Traffic Engineers, so we define it in those terms, and that there's a reason for that because the tools we've developed work in those terms. We also figure out, well, is it mixed use? Because if it's mixed use, we want to consider if we're going to get to reduce any trips just because on site it's like that. And then if we have a redevelopment project, we have a special process, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the second thing we do is screening. So there are a bunch of situations where on the facts of the project, we can pre-screen them out. We can basically make a finding just on the facts that there's no significant impact. The first one's a small project one. And so that's less than 110 trips a day. So if you bring a small project forward on the facts, you can have a finding of non-significance. So 110 trips for folks reference, that's about 10 single family units, 9, 10, kind of in that range kind of thing. If it's within a half mile of high quality transit, and there's a very specific definition, meaning that it has to be 15-minute headway, so that you know applies in some circumstances. Local serving retail, we kind of talked about that. Affordable housing, that's an important one to recognize. And basically affordable housing is there because we know that lower income folks do 2 things that are kind of unique. They tend to try to locate closer to their employers, and they also tend to make fewer discretionary trips because they have less income. Local essential services, basically it's the same idea. If I put a dentist office or a small medical office or some other use that I wouldn't try to drive farther out because it's a required use, we exempted small ones, just small ones, not regional ones. Map-based screenings, basically there's situations where we can look at some maps. We have some Coletti maps we provided, and you can look on the facts of that, sometimes make a finding based on that. And then redevelopment projects. And like I said, redevelopment projects are a little unique. And I'm just going to give you one quick example of what a redevelopment project would look like. And so in this example, we have an existing site that's got retail and office, and those 2 in total make 10,000 VMT per day. Well, I come forward and I'm going to tear that down and I'm going to put residential project in. Well, you can see the VMT is less. So because I'm replacing a higher intense use with a less intense use, I can have a finding of non-significance based on that. So redevelop, it gets a little bit of a unique situation. But if I am 10,001 VMT, it's as though the site was a fair site to begin with. It doesn't matter. The conversation's over. You don't get any credit. You have to start analyzing it from scratch. These are the actual right out of the document we provided to the city. It goes through the exact descriptions of the thresholds of significance. And like I said, this is step 3. So we're looking at the thresholds of significance and designing a study. Scope. Step 4 is the applicant would bring forth the scope to the city staff. And the point of that is just to make sure that we don't have any mistakes in terms of process. We want to make sure that folks don't do this twice. So it's better that they bring forward a small scope and say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the analysis methodology I'm going to use. Here's why I'm doing it. And it's just a better practice than just having folks do it on the outside and bringing that forward. Finally, step 5 is the VMT analysis and VMT mitigation. And this is the step where we start getting into the whole thing about, well, okay, I've got an impact. Now I need to figure out how to mitigate it. And the way we mitigate VMT is very different than we mitigate traffic. There's no widening intersection doesn't solve a VMT problem. In fact, it makes it worse. we have to start looking at things that are called transportation demand measures. And what these are is everything from, they can be policies, they can be infrastructure, it could be everything from I'm going to provide a lot more bike lockers on site. I could have a policy where I buy transit tickets for my employees. But it's a lot of different, it's kind of a collection of different tools that you can bring to bear to try to reduce that impact to less than significant. And then finally, the last step is mitigation monitoring. And this is a CEQA requirement. This isn't specific to SB 743. It's just a part of the thing. This is a little more difficult in some ways to do mitigation monitoring with VMT than it is with LOS, because LOS, we go build it. Well, you've done your mitigation. Here, sometimes we have to do some, like, require an applicant perhaps to come back and like do traffic counts in a year to prove that the measures that they put in place were effective. And we kind of recommend, you know, really this could, one of the concerns about mitigation with VMT is it can be in perpetuity, like it could go on forever and you continually have to write reports. I think we recommend not taking that tack, that maybe you acquire for a year or two so that they can demonstrate that they're following through. And then finally, last slide. This is just a snapshot of what the VMT tool looks like. So one of the things that we've tried to do with this project, and we've done in other agencies too, is we tend to try to build these tools. And the idea of these tools is to make it easier. I realize it doesn't look easier in some ways because there's a lot going on, but it's a tool that's approachable to a larger audience. Because if you do VMT analysis from scratch, you have to have someone who's specialized in travel demand modeling and traffic analysis and a lot of other very specialty tools that there's a very small number of folks that actually have that expertise. But these tools we actually build up that for smaller projects, you can actually just type the address in, it'll go find the address for you. You pick the analysis here, you pick the land use. Like I said, these are all drop-down menus. You put in the number of units. It gives you the VMT per capita, tells you how you're doing against the threshold. In this example, it's no significant impact. So you don't have to get into VTDMs. And over here on the side, we've got a long list of transportation demand measures that you can test to see, you know, if they're effective for your particular set of circumstances. So that's another of the neat little tools that kind of has been provided too. So at that point, that's my presentation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you very much. I think we're now at the point of public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I currently do not see any hands raised on this item. I do have one now. Inga Lawrenson-Dormer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I, of course, attended Planning Commission also for the presentation they'd done and to move it on to the City Council. And yes, it's a good presentation, and I understand how we need to comply with the state law now. And I'm very glad that I see in other reports that the city is not abandoning LOS as a tool to evaluate projects, because I consider LOS to be extremely important along with complying with the VMT for CEQA. But LOS has definitely some benefits also. So I am glad that it is not proposed to remove LOS from our city in evaluating projects, just not for quote unquote CEQA analysis. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do not see any other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Council discussion on the item? Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. There were two recent EIRs. Hotels were mentioned in the presentation. There was an EIR for the ATC, AKA Project Bella. I believe that was evaluated using VMT, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then there's the old Hotel Durrell, now known as Pacific Grove Hotel, I believe. Was that LOS or was that VMT?
I believe that was LOS. That predates the state law requirement.
Well, you know, it's a big reducing carbon So this is a linkage between development and carbon in the atmosphere, and getting 15% reduction is huge. And it all goes, my mind all goes to mitigation, and the presentation was very rich as far as what the program is. It's very kind of open-ended as far as how the mitigation would work its way through. And that's on anything like this, I suppose that's going to be the case, but that is something that I'm kind of mindful of. One of the options, or one of the next steps, it's mentioned at the bottom of the staff report, mentions taking this, I guess you're going to take it to the Planning Commission as far as a general plan amendment and an update to our Muni code. Is that correct? Do you have a timeline on that, by the way?
If the council directs staff to do that, we would take that forward. Right now, it's not proposed that we actually make those amendments unless directed by the council.
Well, okay, so that raises a question. If we do adopt this resolution, how does it become integrated into our municipal code? And then how's the municipal code then consistent with our general plan?
At this point, the adoption of the resolution just solidifies that we will use the regional thresholds agreed to by this larger regional project. It would make sense to move forward with Muni code and general plan amendments so that everything is consistent. But right now, the state law for CEQA projects is that you have to use vehicle miles traveled. This tool simply allows us to use the regional thresholds.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, go ahead.
If Frederick has any more information you want to share, go ahead.
You're correct. So for the level of service, you still need to rely on your general plan, the current general plan, and those requirements, right? So that's how you're going to move forward with evaluating projects. And then for CEQA, you'll use the VMT.
I don't think it makes any sense to have development standards or CEQA compliance standards that are inconsistent with the general plan and the Muni code. I mean, I've been going to planning commission meetings for a long time, and one of the things that we always talk about is the number of inconsistencies that are in the municipal code, not so much the general plan. But if we can take action tonight to eliminate one of those, I think that would be important. So I would like to see it go to the Planning Commission for review to make those two amendments. And I'm a little confused on how this hybrid would work. CEQA, per the state mandate, CEQA requires VMT analysis and mitigation. And yet I heard someone mention that LOS might still be part of our own internal evaluations. I wouldn't understand why would we want to do that? And if it's not actually meeting CEQA compliance, I don't think we should. So that's maybe just commentary. Lastly, there's maybe, I don't know if they're competing interests, but the state is very active in affordable housing initiatives, and city's certainly involved in that. Is there any CEQA carve-outs for affordable housing projects as regards VMT analysis and mitigation?
Do you want to take a stab at that, Frederick? Or?
I'll take it. Yeah, actually, on the list of presumptions of allowing us to have a finding of non-significance on the facts, that is one of them. If you have a 100% affordable housing development, you're allowed to make that finding just on those facts.
Okay, but it has to be 100%.
Right. If it's less, I think the expectation is you demonstrate that it still makes sense. I would say that that's still an important consideration. But at some point, if it gets down to 5%, well, it's really probably a net may not be having that effect. So there's a little bit of as a policy, some folks have gone maybe a little bit less, 90% or something like that. But at some point, there's probably needs to be some analysis just to figure out, what the implication of that affordable housing is based on the percent.
Okay, thank you. What does the state statute mandate as far as the thresholds?
There is no statute. There is no absolute standard on it. That's just going off of OPR guidance. And OPR said if there's 100%, we recommend that you have a finding of non-significance based on that. So we just mirrored that. That's not to say that you can't go with a lower number. The only onus on us is to make sure that we have some evidence for going with a lower number.
Okay, those answer my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to thank Allison. Thank you for bringing this forward. And Michael and Frederick, thank you for the presentation. One of the things that we actually had during our council agenda today was around goals and tactics. And in fact, we have some reducing carbon footprint, affordable housing, you name it. Everything's there in the goals and tactics. And I think this is the right way to approach things. LOS is, in my view, at least an outdated kind of item, and probably we need to think forward, think more strategically. So thank you. My question is actually maybe two questions. One is, when you say VMT per capita, are you able to, through that calculator that you showed, are you able to actually measure VMT per capita for Pacific Grove? Is that how you can do it, or am I wrong?
Yeah, actually, yes. What the calculator does is it basically takes the data from the travel demand model. So the travel demand model is it's essentially a spatial model that looks at how land uses interact with each other. So it figures out the distance of trips. So we took all the data from the AMBAG model for Pacific Grove and spread it out and basically calculated different areas what they would be. So it's kind of pre-calculated into the tool, but it's based on the travel demand model that AMBAG developed. So it is sensitive to being in Pacific Grove.
Got it. And so am I correct to say that we will have a baseline through this tool?
Yes.
And would it also be reasonable to assume that 2020 being 2020, that VMT would have been far less compared to any other year?
I don't actually, trips have been going up. So generally speaking, as the economy's increased, we've actually been kind of heading in the wrong direction a little bit with VMT. So I don't know if the baseline, I'm not sure if I know the answer to that question off the top of my head, like comparatively to like how much VMT per capita folks were making in prior years, because what they do is AMBAG updates the model. They go in and analyze trip making characteristics of folks, and we update that information so that we'll recalculate it and find out where they're at. But I don't know if I have a historical answer for you.
Got it. And final question from me, since it's coming through AMBAG, I'm guessing you have almost like a baseline for all the cities in the county. Is it fair to say that VMT is it a relative measure so for example, if Monterey has a higher VMT and PG has a lower VMT, is it because just PG is doing things better, or is it because of the region, of the characteristics? How does that play out?
Well, actually, that's a great point. It's actually kind of both, because it is sensitive to the context, but the way VMT kind of works is it's naturally going to keep pushing development to where development is, because the closer land use is and the more compact it is, it shortens VMT. So if we look at a map for Pacific Grove, it tends to do very well with residential as a starting point, versus someplace further out in the county doesn't do very well because people have to drive further for their shopping, they have to drive further for their schools and all the other stuff. So they are a poor performer out of the box for Pacific Grove because it's a denser area in the county as well. And just for a little bit of backdrop, this was part of a contract where we did it for I think all but one jurisdiction within the county were a part of this contract. So that calculator actually works for all the different jurisdictions, and some of them have slightly different thresholds because of their city specifics, but you can look anybody up and kind of test and see how they perform what they calculated.
Fantastic. All right, very, very good. I'll probably have more questions, but none at the moment. Thank you.
If I may just respond to the question about the 2020, right? So this is a 2015 model from AMBAG, updated to 2018. So 2018 is the base, right? And 2018 is basically reflecting, that's what we determine the thresholds on, because OPR says you need to be 15% less than existing VMT, right? So just heads up. So it's based on existing data out there.
Got it. So maybe a follow-up question. So when we have a baseline, right, like, is this as easy as like us updating that baseline every year, or does this need to be in like, say, 5-year increments because it's a full-on study kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great point too. I think what's tending to happen is, what happens is the MPOs tend to update their models every 3 years, kind of with the cycle that they're doing their RTP. So as they update it, so it's probably going to be more like a 3-year cycle for most agencies as they update it, because we're always a couple of years behind on the travel demand models because it's a lot of effort to update those. But it's once you get the data, like you've already got a program in place and a tool, so you just load the new data into it. So it's not as much of a heavy lift on the second and third try as it is the first try.
Got it.
Yeah. I think the next version of the AMBAG model is going to be available next year, middle of next year, and then it may be a good time to relook at the numbers.
All right, very good. Thank you.
I'd like to piggyback on some of the comments or questions from Councilmember Pedori. With this resolution, are we approving a model? Because in the model has the data, has these thresholds with which projects will be measured against. So we are adopting the thresholds that are obtained from regional data that are put into this model. Is my understanding correct or fuzzy?
I think that's generally true. I mean, I don't think that's directly what's happening, but the AMBAG model is the basis for most of the transportation planning in the area. So, it's already kind of that baseline tool. It is worth pointing out one thing that's interesting about VMT, and it's kind of important to understand, is that VMT is typically, it's the opposite of level of service because it's worse in the first years and gets better over time. Because what happens is, as you add more land use and become denser, VMT starts to come down. So actually, where level of service gets worse over time, like in 20 years, it's going to be worse because we've done more development. VMT is actually worse at the beginning, typically. And as time goes on and we get more density, it tends to get better over time if we build compact land use.
Let me rephrase my question. Thank you for that. So for example, in our code, we say building coverage on a parcel of land, 0.6, 60% of the land, say, can be covered by a building. So that 60% is a hard number that our planners use. Well, now these VMT thresholds are hard numbers that are going to be used to evaluate projects. Does this resolution say the numbers that come out of the model are those numbers that the city adopts? I guess that's a question, well, for anyone.
I think that's correct, right, Mike? I mean, you use the model, which is the best tool out there to generate the VMT, and then from the VMT, you get the threshold, which is 15% less. So yes.
The only small asterisk I might put is sometimes what agencies have done is they adopt the policy and the methods, but they leave some flexibility in the numbers so that they don't have to keep coming back to council every time there's an update to the model. So AMBAG re-updates their model and we get new data, and then we just go and update that rather than come back and adopt a new threshold, because it's already we've already said, here's exactly how we calculate it, here's how we do the work. It's just an update to the numbers as we get better data over time from AMBAG.
Well, it's obviously it was on my mind as something that I think we need to think about. The models, the numbers that come out of the model, are those the right numbers for us? Were they done the right way? So just a couple of other quick points. Does Pacific Grove has a transit priority area, or I think you called it a high quality transit area?
No, unfortunately, do not. So it is the primary metric is a bus every 15 minutes. And also, and you don't have any of those services in Pacific Grove.
Okay, I'll repeat some information I got from Director Hunter, which said for the vast majority of projects in Pacific Grove, this analysis is not there'll be no significance on vehicle miles traveled, so we don't have to worry about it. And my one last question is somewhat speculative. Again, I'm thinking about Councilmember Pedori, who's our TAMC director. Are you familiar with Highway 156 by any chance?
Yes.
And so my understanding is, and Councilmember Pedori can correct me if I'm wrong, is there is a parallel highway proposed to the current 156. I believe this, my impression is this new methodology, switching from loss of service to vehicles miles traveled, would make that highway, that new highway, more difficult to pass CEQA. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, because you're providing additional lanes between 101 and Highway 1, and that would add additional traffic, and additional traffic would induce VMT.
Okay, interesting. Councilmember Emilio and then Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Logged out. Thank you, Mayor. I'm appreciate the presentation, and if you look at the goal alignment of environmental stewardship, adopt and develop policies and ordinance that preserve and protect the environment, and this obviously is proposed, and I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Okay. We received a presentation on VMT and CEQA compliance and adopt by resolution the regional VMT thresholds of significant policies as described in the report.
I'll second that.
All right, discussion on the motion. Councilmember Tomlinson, you had your hand raised.
No, sir, Mayor, I'm good. I was going to make the motion. I had a couple comments, but they're not substantial, so I'm ready to vote.
Okay, Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also ask the maker to consider a friendly amendment to direct staff to bring to the Planning Commission a amendment to the general plan and municipal code to be consistent with the adoption of this resolution.
I don't know if that's is that part of the
That's
recommendation?
Yeah, it's in the next steps at the bottom of the page.
Okay, that's fine, Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, and I thank you very much. And there's also some typos in the resolution that need to be corrected. Page 2, first paragraph reads, transportation impacts should be evaluate for purposes. That should be evaluated for purposes of CEQA review. And in the second paragraph, first sentence, again, page 2, whereas the city of Pacific Grove, of course, that should just be whereas the city of Pacific Grove. If you're fine with that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
And I will keep my second.
Any discussion on the amended motion? I'll ask a question. The next steps as written on the agenda report says should consider. And so that sounds like directing staff to consider it at a time that's not specified and bring it back to council.
I'm fine with that, Mayor.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, Councilmember Coletti, you are muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I was asking that it go to the Planning Commission. It's part of the municipal code, the general plan, and any amendment to the general plan and Title 23 has to go to the Planning Commission first. I just don't think it makes any sense to adopt this policy and then leave in the general plan and our muni code inconsistencies.
Okay. May we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Council Members Emilio,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Paduri,
Aye.
Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
I move we take a short recess. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye, all in favor? All right, and we will resume at 8:03 p.m. Let's just wait one more minute. This agenda item absolutely requires all council members on board. Okay, let's resume. We're now at item 13B. That's special meetings and closed session. That's my item. And Ms. Kendall, would you help me with the slides, please?
Yes, sir.
And that's the topic. Okay, let's start off with some definitions. What is a regular meeting? It's pretty simple, actually. It's a meeting of City Council on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, starting at 6 p.m. That's it. That's the definition. If City Council has a meeting at any other time or day, it's a special meeting. It's, again, pretty simple. And why do we have special meetings? Well, when we need to conduct council business that we're not able to finish during a regular meeting. And what is an open session? An open session is one that's open to the public. The public can attend. The word session, I guess generically, I've seen it used to connotate a fraction of a meeting. It could be an entire meeting, or it could be multiple meetings. So not to focus on the word session, but focus on the word open as opposed to closed session, which is conducted in private. And the Ralph M. Brown Act from the state describes the topics that may be discussed in private for various reasons. Personnel issues, for example, property negotiations, litigation, three examples for closed session. Next slide, please. So when are special meetings called? By the municipal code 2.04, they can be called at any time by the mayor or a majority of council members, which would be 4. And closed sessions are normally scheduled before a regular meeting. That's Council Policy 17. And therein lies a lot of confusion, because our current practice has been to have a special meeting, to have a closed session right before a regular meeting, which means it's always a special meeting. So folks have thought, well, special meetings are closed sessions, but no, that's not the case. So we could have closed sessions as part of a regular meeting, for example. All right, next. So I've been hearing comments for a while now, concerns about this. I call it special meetings - closed sessions, because for all intents and purposes. Lately, they've been one and the same. They're too long, too many, the rush, too little information, etc. Other concerns. And so the reason I put this agenda item together was to give council members an opportunity to discuss amongst ourselves these concerns and what, if any, actions we might want to contemplate to address those concerns. So here are some options. Well, first of all, we could just simply adhere to the code and policy more precisely. We could have fewer meetings. We could put more agenda, we could lump the agenda items to fewer meetings, or we could take the agenda items at special meetings and hold them during regular meetings. That's an example. We could limit the time for special meetings. Kind of do that already. Like today, we held a special meeting at 5 o'clock, so it had to end well within an hour. Another option is to schedule the special meetings in advance, perhaps even set up a regular schedule. And another option is to shorten the time for special meetings, make them more productive by creating pre-read reports, executive summary, minutes, for example, more information supplied for special meetings. And I want, oh, next slide, please. So the purpose of this, as I said, is to hear council discuss and get some ideas and see if there is a direction that a majority or more would like to go, and how can we improve. And the next steps, I'm not looking or expecting motions today. It could be policy, it could be directions to myself, to the city manager, it could be a code change. So I don't know what the next steps are. I'm thinking that once we know where council would like to head, then perhaps the next step is to enact that in some fashion. And that's my presentation. Let's go out to public comment.
Jane Haynes, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate his public discussion about special meetings and closed sessions. However, there are some additional criteria. A special meeting is open to the public, but a closed meeting is not. A special meeting allows only one topic to be discussed, and that topic can be broadly defined, such as Monterey recently had a special meeting on cannabis and a special meeting on the Brown Act. Neither of those would be appropriate for a closed session. A closed session is not open to the public, and it allows discussion of only very narrowly defined topics. On July 31, I provided you with data comparing Monterey's and Pacific Grove's closed sessions. Monterey and Pacific Grove each met in closed session 16 times during 2021. The data shows that Monterey had only 9 discussions of topics discussed in closed session more than once, whereas Pacific Grove had 31 such discussions. Since October 7, 2020, related to the ATC project, Pacific Grove has had 11 closed sessions pursuant to agendas which state that the sole topics to be discussed are price and terms of payment for portions of Sloat Avenue and Ocean View Boulevard. So why would Pacific Grove City Council need to discuss price and terms of payment for the same property 11 times over a period of 15 months? The City Council's goal is transparency, accountability, and communication. The Brown Act is to ensure transparency and accountability. The city attorney is the city's legal advisor. His duty is to ensure the city's compliance with the Brown Act. Your agenda report makes 6 recommendations, but I request a 7th. I request that the city attorney's performance evaluation rate him on how well the city of Pacific Grove complies with the Brown Act. Such an action would require consultation with a qualified consultant, and I would recommend that the League of California Cities suggests the names of such consultants. So I'm very concerned about the city of Pacific Grove's compliance with the Brown Act. So I hope you make that a part of the city attorney's performance evaluation.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tempore Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, to me, I don't see this as a complex issue. My 2 cents would be to continue with the current practice pursuant to our actual existing policy 000-17, holding the closed session meetings, not necessarily the special meetings. They're going to be special with closed at 5 o'clock before the regular meeting, and not have it go before that, simply because it's just very difficult for us to get to the meeting and be, and have it go, be productive. So I think that would be my first thing, would be just to stick with what we're doing with the closed sessions, as that has been the practice I've been used to for the last 5 years, and I think has been around for a while. And the other, with respect to special meetings, I would not support or support a motion or anything like that, or any kind of item in the future related to setting and scheduling other special meetings, because our meetings have been set by the code and we have them on the first and third Wednesdays. And I think that we ought to try to stick to that and just be more efficient within our meetings and keep them moving. And then I think we could still get all of the things done that we're doing. So those would be my 2 things. Those would be my input on this item. I just don't. It's basically 2 things. 1, continue with the current practice of closed session, and 2, do not, set a schedule of special meetings. Use special meetings at the time that they're required, and that's what we've always done, in fact. So, as to the conduct of the special meeting, I'm not going to talk at all about the conduct of the closed session, because I don't think that's appropriate. And as to the conduct of a special meet, or how they're done, or I think that's getting a little bit in the weeds, quite frankly. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'd like to focus on closed session meetings. But first, before that, let me start off, because it was raised by Ms. Haynes. Why so many meetings? It takes time to reach consensus. I mean, that's my interpretation. And maybe we are just on some sticky subjects that are I wouldn't say dragging it out, but it's just, we're not in there wasting each other's time as far as I'm concerned. So, and it just does take time to reach consensus. So my comments really are going to focus on the current practice as regards closed session. I disagree with Councilmember Smith. I believe the current practice is not working, and for 2 reasons. 1, there is no agenda report given to council in a timely fashion to process the information we need to have a meaningful discussion. So if there is frustration on council as to how our closed sessions meetings are going, I think that's largely due to the fact that we're not given the information and a packet to at least 72 hours. I mean, that's what we get for our open session agenda items. Why would it be any less for closed session items? It just makes no sense. So we need timely data and documents prior to even thinking about having the closed session. But if one is called 72 hours minimum, we need an agenda report. Just like we have an open session, we need the documents and attachments, just like we have an open session. We shouldn't be doing anything differently, but we are. We kind of get these massive data dumps at the last minute and, you know, expect to give guidance and policy decisions. It doesn't work that way. So no, the current closed session practice is not working. So the second item is we've got an agenda report. Excuse me, the first item is agenda reports. The second item is we need minutes from our closed sessions. Currently, there are no minutes generated for closed session meetings. The Brown Act specifically allows minutes to be generated. And because there are no minutes, we very often flounder on what we discussed previously. So again, if there is kind of a feeling that we're not being very productive in closed session, then I simply say, adopt what we do in open session, have an agenda report and generate minutes. And I don't think that's a big ask. I think that's just how we have to do business, and that's how we're doing it in open session. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti. Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. I agree with Councilmember Coletti. You know, I know for me, especially when I hear from Ms. Haynes, how we've had 12 closed sessions about one item. You know, it's impossible for me to retain what has happened. You know, and so we definitely need information and minutes, and that would be helpful. I mean, I definitely make it a priority to read and be prepared when I come to meetings. And I would appreciate the same opportunity for closed sessions. Thank you for clarifying, you know, a special meeting and a closed session and getting us all on the same page. I have been hoping and, you know, optimistic going, oh, we're just so busy and hopefully we won't have to have a special meeting or a closed session. It seems like every week, but that's not happening. And so for me, because I work and I have kids, and especially with school starting, I actually wouldn't mind if they were calendared ahead of time, and then we could cancel the meeting if we don't need it. My preference is, though, is that we don't need them all the time. I don't really know what the solution for that is. But I appreciate you bringing this for discussion and for listening to the feedback and being proactive. So those are my thoughts. As far as, you know, how to do it, it's in the code already that you provided in the agenda report, and that is not necessarily happening. So, you know, I would encourage that be sort of what we strive for. But again, to have the information ahead of time, have minutes, like Councilmember Coletti said, and to perhaps schedule them on a quarterly basis and cancel if it's not needed. Thank you.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Sorry, I lowered my hand but didn't unmute. Thank you. Thanks for bringing this forward. It has been challenging. I will say that I agree that just, pre-work, briefings, efficiency, making the meetings where all of us, staff included, council members included, myself included, can be more prepared to just knock out the work in one, maybe two meetings, rather than drag something out over 12 meetings. And, the next agenda item is, is going to be geared towards that, trying to improve the process so we don't have 12 meetings on that next topic, and so always striving for improvements and efficiencies in meetings, I think should be our number one goal. And, my takeaway is just, preparedness for the meeting, trying to be respectful of the colleagues. There's 7 of us. So if we have an hour, that's less than 10 minutes a person. And going around the horn multiple times, and staff needs to, talk to us, city attorney typically. It's very difficult to get through an item in 1 hour if everybody isn't prepared and doesn't have the literature in order to prepare themselves. So I think we can all tighten up on that. Again, myself included, I will debrief myself accordingly. I will also say that, I learned something tonight with the semantics that I always said, this whole special meeting, closed session stuff. So anything that happens between 6 and 10 is our regular meeting time. And if we meet outside of that, it's a special meeting, and closed session is a special meeting. So I propose that we have closed session, i.e. a special meeting, from 5 to 6 as the standing trend. And if we know that we need longer, we maybe go 5 to 6:30. I mean, there's no reason why we can't, like the mayor said, have closed session bump into the regular session. That's okay. It can also be tacked on at the end. But what's very difficult is the week prior for me to find out that we're starting at 4 p.m. I work until 5 p.m. and then drive home from Salinas. And so it's already a challenge to get to where I need to be by 5 p.m. If we know in advance, I can do it, but 1 week is not sufficient. So that's where I've felt where you've heard me complaining, basically, if it's not calendared. So I like that idea of being able to, I'm not saying I can't start before 5, but it needs to be at least a 2 weeks notice to do so. But my preference is to just have it be standing that we start our closed sessions at 5, and if they need to go till 6:30 on a day, then that's fine. And then if we don't need them at all, they just get canceled, and we start at 6 p.m. But really, I think what's going to tighten this up the most is only calling the closed session once we're truly ready and all prepared, so we can have a tight, distinct conversation and make good decisions. That's it. Thanks.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Laredo. I have a couple of questions, but I have a question for Mr. Laredo in regards to the minutes. There's been talk about minutes. Mr. Laredo, is he on?
I am. Yes, hello.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. Mr. Laredo, for minutes on a closed session, who gets those minutes? Just the council?
So those minutes would be restricted to just the council members. I believe our office have been producing versions of those upon request. I'm not sure if that practice is still continuing, but that would be a confidential communication only distributed to the council members.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Laredo. The other thing, Mayor, through the mayor here, I agree with Council Member Smith. I think we keep it as it is. I've also, and I know I mentioned to the mayor one time or maybe a couple of times, sometimes we need a special session because there's like 3 or 4 agenda items that just we didn't get to. And my theory has always been, let's get the job done. If we have to, I know it's not popular, if we have to meet Tuesday or Thursday, that's one of the things we can do. I know I'm speaking as the Lone Ranger here, but I say I go along with Councilmember Smith. I'm not going to repeat it, but that's my thoughts on it. And in close, just as it was before, closed session at 5. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to ride on all the feedback from all the council members here. But I believe that we should have a standing session, closed session at 5 o'clock. And if need be, we can cancel it. I believe we should have the agenda, kind of like the agenda for the meetings far in advance. 72 hours is still, I would say, kind of like on the lower side. I would rather have a week at least. So kind of like far in advance, like appeals to me. So that's the second argument. And then to the earlier point where we're not exactly remembering what happened from an earlier agenda item. If we're making a practice to do it 5, and if you have more than one agenda item, I believe it is going to spill over. So I'm actually okay with having some minutes or something captured, which gives a synopsis of what happened in the previous meeting so that we are able to move forward productively in the next meeting. Thank you.
I'm going to, well, there seems to be one thing that all of council appears to agree on, or a vast or majority, certainly a majority of council agrees on the pre-read, that we need material on that special meeting or closed session agenda items at least 72 hours ahead of the meeting. And I'm gonna fall back on our city manager, Mr. Harvey. Is that what you heard as well?
I'm sorry, Mayor, was that a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. The one thread that I heard, I think, from maybe at least 5 council members was to have pre-read, to essentially have agenda reports on closed session items at least 72 hours in advance, plus minutes for closed sessions.
Couple concerns with that. One is you will not always have the luxury of 72 hours notice depending on the need to convene a special meeting. There's a reason why you're allowed to call those with just 24 hours notice, and that's because sometimes there's an urgent reason to discuss a matter with the policy board and you need to get to that board right away. You're not going to have time to put together a thoughtful report that's going to be circulated for days in advance. That's just not possible. Secondly, minutes are problematic. Not only are they confidential, but what happens is it puts myself or the city attorney in a difficult spot often, because either we have to somehow be the minute taker as we're actively engaged in a discussion, or we have to bring in another employee to capture that minutes, an employee that it might not be appropriate for them to be there depending on the nature of what is discussed. Finally, we have had instances when we have distributed documents, sometimes even months in advance, and they're, this sitting council has admitted that, even though that was the case, that wasn't read. So, that's fine. We can try to, get things out earlier, but I just want to point out that we have had instances where things just haven't been read.
Okay, thank you for that. I've heard a number of folks that and I'm going to do a go around. This is part of my sort of summary, and then we'll have another round of discussion. I heard a majority of folks saying that they would like special meetings, closed sessions to start at 5 p.m. And
I have a question.
that's member Puri. Yes.
Are we, because the commentary that I made was for closed session meetings, not necessarily special meetings. And I understand what the city manager is saying for special meetings. I totally get it. But I thought we were discussing closed session meetings, not special meetings. Special meetings are special, therefore it's a different practice.
I'm totally confused now. Mr. Harvey.
Certainly. So if you have an emergency situation that is of a sensitive nature, it's likely to be a special meeting that is a closed session. Let's say that there's a new urgent threat of litigation that is very troubling that we need to discuss immediately with the council. And we found out about it on a Saturday morning. I would probably call, or, I would ask for a closed session special meeting, maybe, on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. It would be within that 72-hour window. Does that make sense? I mean, there are urgent things that come up that you need to discuss with your policy board, sometimes of a sensitive nature or one where litigation is threatened.
Yeah, so I'm in total agreement with what you're saying, city manager. My question really was, we're trying to schedule or the 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock window. Aren't we trying to schedule a closed session meeting or calendaring a closed session meeting? Why are we saying it is a special meeting?
So, and again, forgive me, Mayor, I'm jumping in on your agenda.
No, go ahead, please.
Because it's outside your established 6 to 10 p.m. meeting hours. So those are the first and third Wednesdays, and meetings that are outside of that are special.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just a couple of reactions. One on running into the regular meeting. Our regular meeting starts, as you all know, at 6 p.m. And I think we run into some difficulties, certainly with the public, where we start delaying those meetings right at 6 o'clock. Logistically and the ability of the public to come to our meetings and expect to be able to attend them. I find that problematic. We did it a couple of times, and I got negative feedback on that practice. So I'm just a couple of things for folks to think about. If we schedule regularly a special meeting to handle closed session topics at 5 o'clock before each regular meeting, that obviously is a very limited window of time and is probably less. It's unlikely it's going to be able to handle more than one topic. And so we do run into the issue of backlog of topics. Councilmember Emilio alluded to what we recently had a special meeting where we had, I think, three topics on an alternate Wednesday. So we could give it a try, but we're only allowing a relatively small amount of time for closed sessions. And when we have things like was described earlier, 12 closed sessions on one item, that's 6 months worth of closed sessions. It doesn't leave room for other things. Okay, Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. So I hear what the city manager is saying about that, last minute litigation, but and my 2 years on council, I've yet to experience that. So I think that those situations are really rare. And in those rare times, of course, it would be understandable for staff to not have time to get, an agenda report together. And then as far as the minutes goes, we do have a mayor pro tem now, and maybe that's part of their duty is to take minutes during the closed session. That is a rotating position. And maybe that can be, the responsibility. I think that that's a reasonable thing to ask. And also there have been some closed sessions and or special meetings where the mayor has taken, some notes. So I don't think that the minutes are going to be a huge issue, and I wouldn't expect them to be detailed or very long. I am curious though, what are we doing different from Monterey or even Carmel or other cities that have closed sessions for 1 hour once a month? I mean, why are we so different? I mean, that is something that I think, we can try to maneuver and arrange and accommodate, but ultimately I think that we should try to figure out, what is the root cause? Why are we inefficient or ineffective or what is happening? What is missing to where we're having to have, 12 closed sessions on one item or 6 or however many? It doesn't seem typical. So I would like to think on that and try to figure out, what we can do. Unless the city manager has some input to provide. But, I think ultimately that's something that we need to be thinking about as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti? Then, or Mr. Harvey, did you want to respond or? Oh, Councilmember Coletti, then Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate Councilmember McAdams and Councilmember Tomlinson's remarks. I think what I got out of them there is about efficiency. And we do have a narrow window to do the business. And if we're not being efficient in preparing for that meeting, we're kind of stuck with this situation we're dealing with now. So I agree, efficiency needs to be the focus. And that means timely agenda reports that have all the attachments, that include all the rationale for what the proposed action would be. And, I think the idea that there would be urgency closed session meetings is a bit of a red herring. As Councilmember McAdams pointed out, that's going to be few and far between. What we're talking about is doing our normal business. And yes, there will be urgencies and a need to call a closed session or a special meeting quickly. Those are the 1%, kind of things that you don't really base your policy on. And everyone expects that or would make accommodations for that, certainly. So timely agenda reports. And as far as minutes, this is a standard practice by other jurisdictions. In fact, the closed session minutes are allowed specifically through the California Government Code. And that code is 54957.2. I'll send this to council. But basically it says the legislative body of a local agency may by ordinance or resolution designate a clerk or other officer, we're all officers by the way, or employee of the local agency who shall attend each closed session meeting of the legislative body and keep and enter a minute book, a record of topics discussed and decisions made at the meeting. currently, our minutes are what's called action minutes. So-and-so made a motion, the vote was such and such. That's very, that's a synopsis of what occurred. It's the action taken by council. So taking minutes, those kind of minutes are very simple to do. Right now, we rely on the recording of closed session meetings, and those are only kept by the city for 18 months. So if you want to know what happened in a closed session meeting more than 18 months ago, you're out of luck. That record was destroyed. So minutes are essential to just basic good governance, it seems to me. And we do it certainly for open session. There's a reason for that. And we should do it for closed session. And choosing someone to do it, Councilmember McAdams mentioned the mayor pro tem. That makes sense. You appoint someone, like you appoint a secretary, like on the planning commission. They're typically responsible for doing the minutes, and other boards and commissions do it the same way. This is not a heavy lift. It happens every day and at every meeting. So I think we need to be doing it as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thanks, Mayor. I will say, I like the idea of what's the root cause and looking at it from all angles. And I will add a couple things. We are 7. Those other cities have 5. So that's 2 less people to talk and take up time. And we also are often divided. So we don't, that takes a longer time to come to consensus. So that is going to just make us have to go longer. And then I'll say, the mayor is very kind to give us multiple times to speak all the time, many bites at the apple, if you will, but that allows for being ill prepared. So you can then learn while you go, rather than be prepared and just speak once and have your point taken. So I'm not talking to anyone specifically, mostly to myself even, so, in being more prepared, we should only have to talk once if our remarks are prepared, and we are given the information to prepare with. So I'll just throw all that out there for friendly debriefing for all of us to try to get more efficient, because we aren't right now, and I think we can all do better.
Mayor Pro Tempore Smith.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Your Honor. Okay, so let me I'm trying to digest that last commentary. Okay, so let me start with the easy one. The closed sessions should not be always scheduled. I think I kind of heard that. I think that the closed session is as needed because it's confidential in nature. You don't necessarily want to have a closed session every single regular meeting. You may want to have one a month. You may end up having one a month. You may end up having 0. You may end up having 2. If you're us during COVID, you may end up having 4. But I think that's one point I want to make. Just my sense is that, or my impression is that we should have closed session. It's obvious it is a special meeting at 5 p.m. before the regular meeting as needed. And I think that that's consistent with council policy 00017. And then I'll speak to the minutes. I disagree. I do not think we should have minutes. It is a may in the code. It's not a mandatory. It's not a shall. It's may. You may have minutes. I think it's a bad idea. I think that it could get leaked. This stuff is confidential for a reason. Protects the city, and that's my main concern. And so I don't favor minutes or agenda reports for closed session. It could be that I've been on the council for 5 years and I'm used to the way it is. And I remember, in the past, it was can be bewildering the way it all happens. But I just think that it's in my mind. I know there's disagreement on the council, and I'll get to that. That'll be my third point. But there's disagreement between us on various topics, but nonetheless, my belief is that it is a practice that has worked, and over the years, and we've made good decisions in closed session. And I'm a lawyer, so obviously I like confidential, discussion of cases and all that stuff. I don't want that stuff floating around. I don't want emails with reports floating around about it. So that's how I feel about it. And also, if as far as appointing a person to take the minutes, I find that if I'm trying to take notes on something, I'm not necessarily, and I think this is everybody, quite frankly, I'm not necessarily really engaging in the conversation the way that I might want to if I'm sitting there trying to clerk the notes out. So that's another issue. I don't really want to reach that, because my threshold issue is, should we even have minutes and reports? And my thought is no. Finally, coming to the point made by Councilmember Tomlinson, my take on this whole impression of this whole thing is that it is divisive, and I think that causes the time delay. So going around 2-3 times, I don't necessarily think it's a preparation issue. I really don't. I think that it's just, there's a lot of rebuttal happening, and so to me, it's not a preparation issue. I think this council is pretty well prepared when they walk in the room. So that's what it is to me. That's how I see it, and that's just where I'm at with it. I think we should limit the amount of times we go around, and maybe once for more minor items, and maybe twice for major things. Like, I remember in the past, like short-term rentals was one of the things that was, really gnarly. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you for listening.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the minutes part, I totally get it. Like you don't want to take minutes for an hour-long discussion, and frankly, I don't know where that'll lead, especially for a closed session. My intent was to convey, if you're continuing a discussion from a past item, or maybe 2 weeks ago, there should be some kind of preamble when we meet the second time to say this is where we left things off. And really, that's all that I'm looking for, is a synopsis to say the council arrived at this point with the last meeting, so we're going to resume discussions here. I don't want to go back to like ground zero to start the whole discussion again. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of what we were discussing. We're going round and round. My gut feeling, I take minutes. I take some notes from the public always. Some scratch notes on who's calling in and what their concern is, and that's very important to me. My feeling is we should take our own minutes, because I'm with Councilman Member Smith. I can't be taking minutes because eventually I get to be Mayor Pro Tem sometime, and I'm not going to be taking minutes. I take my own personal notes, and I always keep it in my file. So I try to remember what it was all about. And then the other point is, if there needs to be clarity on a closed session item or a special session item, contact the authors to get clarity on it. That's just the way I personally work. And or sometimes I'll just contact the mayor. So that's about it.
Okay, we are going to the third go around. Councilmember Coletti. You're on mute.
The more discussion, the better. In fact, that's one of the things I like about this council, is that there aren't these preordained, agenda items. The issue here is really one fundamental question we all need to ask ourselves: why would we do something in open session and do it differently in closed session? That's the question. And I have not heard any reason or rationale for that. I mean, for that to do it that way. If we're doing it in open session, then do it in closed session. That's it. That's all there is to this. And as far as the minutes, I think they've been a little bit mischaracterized. you're not a scribe. You're not transcribing every word that took place. In fact, this is already in our policy, and it's in our BCC handbook. The city has policy where we take action minutes. I think I tried to explain this earlier. And action minutes are simply, this item was discussed and this action was taken, and here's the vote. That's it. That takes 10 seconds to write down. So the idea that you're transcribing every word that takes place is just, that's not what action minutes are. So it's important to really understand what we're talking about. I think we need to do exactly what we do in open session. Have timely agenda reports, and then have minutes that reflect what our action has been. That's just, I don't know, that seems government 101 to me. Thank you.
All right, let me have another shot at summarizing. I think we have agreement on agenda reports for closed sessions, at least 72 hours in advance. I'm not sure if we agree on having minutes from closed sessions. I'm not sure we all agree what those minutes are, and certainly not who's going to make them. So I'll park that to the aside. I've heard that the majority of council members would like closed sessions to start at 5 o'clock before a regular meeting. Mayor Pro Tempore Smith indicated we might not have special meetings. We might only have to call them every once in a while, but history has shown we've been calling them very frequently. It seems to be the rule rather than the exception. I didn't hear anybody object to the current code or policy. In fact, several people spoke to the code and policy. So in regards to setting the agenda for closed session, then what I'd like to do is to work with the city manager. Mr. Harvey, if you'll propose the closed session item, I suspect it would only be one. I mean, an unusual circumstance, maybe 2 closed session items that start at 5 o'clock, which is really only a 45-minute session. But I would say normally it would only, if we're going to start at 5 o'clock, it would be 1 closed session item. And we're going to go by code. Somebody's going to have to say, what is the item? And if council's agreeable, we'll have the city manager send me the item, or 2 or 3 choices. Mr. Harvey.
Sorry, Mayor, I know you're on a roll, but really this sounds more like a policy that you're fleshing out here.
No.
I mean,
Oh, okay.
I think it'd be better than, that's a thought. I mean, have this discussion come back as a draft policy would be a suggestion, so that way it'd be clear to everybody. Just a suggestion. You don't have to take that.
Yeah, no, what I'm, it wouldn't be a policy. I'm suggesting is that we be more firm about that the mayor or majority of council members call the special meeting, so that you would have to send them to me for approval. That's all. No more than that. And then if we have a backlog, as I suspect from time to time, then I think we're going to have to come to council and get council direction on agenda items, because I'm not hearing much of any willingness to meet beyond the 2 hours a month. So that will be an agenda item that either myself or the city manager will have to bring forward and at a regular meeting and have council decide. Is that acceptable? Councilmember Tomlinson?
So I believe that when if you see a backlog coming or it is, we've reached that point, that's when we can work the regular agenda to be slightly less so that we have time on the backside, or do pre-noticed where closed session is from 5 to 6:30. I agree with you about doing it on the fly when the public's expecting 6 o'clock start is bad practice. But if it's put out where it's 5 to 6:30 because we're trying to squeeze in 2 topics, that works. And we can move things off the regular agenda that aren't time sensitive and do agenda management that way. And then, in the worst case scenario, we hold on a different Wednesday, a time that we get rid of the log jam. But I don't know. I have 7 different things written out now. So per what what we were all suggesting here, I can read them off. But those are my comments about how to handle a log jam if we get to that point.
Well, I think at this point, I've got a lot of input, and thank you for all the different thoughts. I'm not sure we've found a magic bullet, but I hear you loud and clear. Special meetings, closed sessions starting 1 hour before regular meetings, and I'll confer with the city manager on usually the one agenda item that will be handled during that closed session. I'm not sure. I think we'll just give that a try. And Mr. Harvey's staff will provide agenda reports in the future. Well, as he did this time, as staff provided agenda reports for this closed session. So I think we're on a start there. Mr. Harvey, do you want to add anything else you heard or want to suggest? Yeah. And we'll bring it back if this is not working. If folks are texting or calling me and saying it's not working, then we'll regroup on this. Okay. Moving on to item 13C. Performance evaluation process. Ms. Candell, could you bring the slides up, please? Right, we're discussing this as topics only, the performance evaluation process for this city manager. We recently concluded this performance evaluation on April 21st of this year. Nominally, it should be conducted annually. We haven't always made that target. During the recent performance evaluation, council members identified process improvements and specifically the need for agreement on objective goals, and which means setting goals before the end of the year when the evaluation is being conducted, and periodic reviews as well. So we get feedback to the city manager as time goes on instead of being blindsided at the end of the year. Next. So to do this, what I'm proposing is for council to develop an improved process. Of course, performance evaluation, there's much information out there as to how to do it well. And we have local consultants that could come in and help council develop a new process. Our HR director, could assist in securing the services of a local consultant. The cost I've suggested could be less than $20,000, and that's just to discuss the generic process, not for a consultant to actually follow through with the actual evaluation, but just to create and launch the process. And that's what I meant. The cost would be dependent on the scope. If we wanted, council wanted more involvement. Next. That's the end. And we'll go out for public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Yes, Lisa Cioni, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm sorry, my hand was up for the last one. And I didn't put it down when it wasn't seen. But I am glad you're discussing this. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring it back to council.
We do have one more
Okay.
from the public. Inga Doimer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think it's an excellent idea. I'd like to see some like quantitative measurable results and criteria and a better way to probably truly evaluate and be able to give direction and feedback. So I think this is an excellent use of a small amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I see no other hands raised, Mayor.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. You know, during my two experiences of doing the city manager evaluation, the second one was improved. It was better, but there's definitely room for additional improvements. You know, and I agree to having a neutral third party. I mean, which is what everybody does. It just makes it cleaner and it makes it fair. And you know, I mean, I also believe that I am in no way an expert on a high level evaluation, and personally myself, I have a lot to learn on how this process works. And so, you know, for this small investment, I think to set a high standard for the evaluation and to make sure, you know, for me, I was really questioning a lot. Am I doing this right? Can I be doing this better? You know, so to be guided by a facilitator and to be guided by, you know, someone who this is their expertise would be beneficial to all of us and to the public. You know, I think that there's a lot of transparency. There's a lot of outreach that we're missing on, but we don't know. And I know for me, the first time I did an evaluation, you know, I basically felt like I was handed like a something how you rate a restaurant on. I mean, it was just, it really lacked any substance. So, you know, it's definitely worth the time and effort because our, you know, city manager is just really an instrumental position in our city. And I want to make sure that, you know, he's meeting his goals and that, you know, we are clear in how we're gauging them. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support hiring someone to help us through this process. I agree with what Councilmember McAdams said. The first time we did it was not nearly as good as the second, but it can improve from there. We all come from different life and job experiences, and ultimately having someone who has the expertise of what it takes to have 7 bosses and try to have 7 people evaluate one person, that's unique, that's different. And so getting an expert who can lead us in doing that effectively will benefit the city in the long run. And the city manager deserves that type of clear, succinct, honest, and organized feedback in an annual basis. So I fully support having a prescribed process and an outside consultant to walk us through that. It's one of the most important things we do. So we need to get it right. And while I do think we did a good job this time, there's room for improvement. So thanks.
Would someone like to make a motion then? Councilmember Coletti.
No, I don't want to make the motion, but I do want to echo what the previous council members had said. And I think this is just another essential thing we need to do to be credible in our performance reviews of the city manager, which is our job. So that's all I had. Someone else can make the motion.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Okay, I move that we direct staff to hire a local human resource consultant to assist council with development of an improved city manager performance evaluation process and work to begin no later than early September.
I'll second that. Okay.
Discussion on the motion, Mayor Pro Tempore Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, so that is our job. I totally 100% agree with that. But I also, whenever I worked for somebody, in law or when I worked for the county of Santa Barbara, or the bosses did the eval and they used their own internal HR people to help. And that's exactly what we did. I think on this item and others, we're kind of reaching out beyond our own folks a little too much. And I think this is another example of that. And we have great people and we rely on them to help us, come up with solutions. And it is our job to evaluate the city manager. So I think we just got to do the job. And I don't think adding in a consultant is necessarily going to help that much. I think that ultimately it's the judgment of the council as a body. And honestly, with 7 people, it's going to be 7 different opinions probably. So as we found, so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Councilmember Pedori.
I actually had a question. So is this to hire somebody to provide us like a document that says this is how you need to evaluate, or is the consultant actually doing the evaluation?
No, the latter question is no. Consultant's not doing the evaluation. The consultant is looking at our current process and advising us on how we could do a better job.
And so once the council okays this and the funds, how is that determined? How did that determination come in, like $20,000? Is that through a proactive feedback?
That was out of the air.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with yeah.
I just, let me just add, I mean, employee performance evaluation is done routinely by many companies all the time. And we're just looking to, and in our process, which you are well acquainted with now, we're just looking at taking our current process and looking at it with an outside consultant and saying, well, are there things that we could improve on this process? And there were two items in particular that the council had identified that we could do a better job on. And so how do we fold that into a revamped process? I'm sorry, and you had?
No, I mean, I fundamentally like it seems looks okay to me on the outside, having somebody external come in and evaluate what we are doing or what we're not doing to make things better. I'm curious to know what this consultant will exactly do, because is it expected that if the consultant recommendation is what the council is going to follow? And how are we going to evaluate whether the council is actually following what the consultant is actually preaching us to do? Because to me, that's the rub, because the consultant might give suggestions in a different manner. So is the intent to hire this consultant to say whatever the consultant is going to suggest is what we're going to do in moving forward?
No, it's not. It's the consultant is hired to advise us, and the consultant would be selected by our HR director, who is already familiar with local consultants in this area.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. We as a council are given the task of evaluating the city manager. And let me just add, a couple of years ago, we did a evaluation individually, and then the HR, Letitia, put it all together and gave it back to us, similar to what a council member Paduri did. I would rather stay with the city council doing the evaluation. We could look at it the following year, but I think this year it's all fresh on our mind. I did like the evaluation tool. It did take some time, but that's what we're charged to do, and to evaluate the city manager. And that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thanks, Mayor. So, you know, I do, like I said, I do think that we made progress, but a lot of the was brought up. It felt like internal to the council, and we probably did not lean on Letitia as much as we should have. I mean, she wasn't in half the meetings, and so maybe we do have that knowledge. I'm sure that we do on staff, but if she has a preferred consultant that can help with this recommendation and help with this process, I think we give that to her and to all of us. And then we can modify, the way that we go forward. And like, we don't have to take the recommendation, but we made a lot of strides, but there was stuff that was, I felt like that we can improve upon. I'll just leave it at that. I already said that once, but so I think a consultant to help Letitia, who I by all means think she's extremely capable, we're very lucky to have her, can make this process even better for all of us.
Councilmember Coletti.
Really quick, Mayor, I think the consultant is meant to help us guide us through the process so that we get an effective and credible evaluation. And to that, I am more than willing to vote yes.
May we have a vote, please, Ms. Kendall?
Hi, Mayor. Yes. Mayor Peak?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith? Mayor Pro Tem Smith? Councilmember Emilio?
I registered a no vote.
Thank you. Council members Emilio?
No.
Councilmember Coletti?
Yes.
Councilmember McAdams?
Aye.
Councilmember Paduri?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the next item, which is a former item 9C. It's the George Washington Park Management Plan. Ms. Hallaby, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you tonight is the authorization of an agreement with DUDEC for the development of the George Washington Park Management Plan in an amount not to exceed $45,880. I do not have a formal presentation prepared, as this was originally on the consent agenda this evening, but all of the relevant details are included in the packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do, Your Honor. Lisa Chiana, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great that the city is finally able to move ahead with authorizing a contract for the George Washington Park Management Plan. It's a very special and unique park that needs a variety of professional assessment due to the conflicting priorities. And I'm glad the missing contract that you're supposed to authorize was provided in an errata yesterday afternoon. However, the 2019 RFP and DUDEC's proposal have not been included in the agenda report. I was able to find the RFP on the city's website. It includes the 1999 or 2000 George Washington Park Master Plan as a reference document for the applicant, which is good. However, the RFP failed to include BNRC's 2019 George Washington Park report. That was the carefully developed report that Council received and discussed at their May 1st, 2019 meeting and authorized staff to proceed with the recommended maintenance activities described in the report, although the report recommendations were disregarded by staff. That report deserves respect. A considerable number of volunteers has been working in the park following recommendations in the BNRC report with support from Public Works and from Monterey Audubon Society. And DUDEC should be provided with the BNRC George Washington Park report since there's no indication they've received it. And they should be informed of the related volunteer work that's ongoing there with BNRC Chair Tom Aikman's coordination. DUDEC's proposal also should be included in this agenda report, as proposals generally have been for other similar contracts. I do see in the agenda report that DUDEC has arborists, foresters, and biologists, but will there be an ecologist working on the job? It's important to have a specialist focused on the entire park ecosystem to assess the interdependent needs of the species found there. Please have DUDEC's proposal provided to the public since it's not on the agenda report, and have Public Works provide DUDEC with BNRC's report and activities before commencing work. I strongly support a management plan, but wish that your vote could have been better informed in the agenda report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Any council discussion on this item, comments? Mayor Pro Tempore Smith.
Move approval, Your Honor.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I'll just add that I want to thank Ms. Hallaby for bringing this forward. What to do with George Washington Park? If you ask 6 people, you will get 6 different answers. Not an easy task for what is relatively small park. And I note that when this work is done, it's going to the BNRC. So there'll be opportunities, I'm sure it'll be posted on our website, and the public will have opportunities to provide input to the results. So Councilmember Coletti.
Just one brief comment. I want to thank Lisa Ciani. I think it's important that we do have complete agenda reports, and I'm sure we will get the appropriate documents to DUDEC before any work is performed. I'll try to make sure of it. Thank you.
May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Baduri,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmembers Tomlinson,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
Emilio.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Excellent. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you to the public, for staff and council for participating here tonight, and the lovely dog that Councilmember Tomlinson has as well. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Meeting adjourned.
everyone.